It was a whirlwind week at the General Assembly as lawmakers raced to wrap up key priorities before adjournment. Though they may not actually be adjourned, maybe they are just on a break. We'll let you decide if it's the House or the Senate that is Ross and or Rachel in this somewhat strained Friends reference. Regardless, several high-impact bills did make it across the finish line, while others, like the budget, remain unresolved. You're watching the Matthews Area Chamber Advocacy Update sponsored by H948. I'm Brian Francis, and it is June 30th, 2025. Now, before we dive into last week in Raleigh, let's review a local bill that we've been following closely. The P.A.V.E. Act is now enrolled and expected to become session law, authorizing a voter referendum in Mecklenburg County on a 1-cent sales tax for transportation. While the bill outlines how funds must be split, 40% for rail, 40% for road, and 20% for buses and microtransit, the biggest development last week was the Senate's addition of a few key safeguards. These new provisions respond to concerns that Charlotte could use the tax revenue to offset general fund spending rather than add to it. Cities receiving road funding from the sales tax must now maintain at least their 10-year average of local roadway spending. And the bill also gives the state auditor authority to track how local sales tax contributions are used in state project scoring, aiming to protect regional fairness and prevent any city from jumping the line. There were other matters that were also taken up in Raleigh last week. Last week saw lawmakers working to push dozens of bills through before adjourning, or not adjourning, whatever it is they did. Committees met back to back, floor calendars were full, and leaders focused on advancing key policy priorities and funding measures. One major goal was passing a mini budget to cover some urgent needs ahead of the new fiscal year, since it's become clear that negotiations over a full state budget are still way too far apart. But despite efforts on both sides, the House and Senate couldn't even reach an agreement on that scaled back plan. The one major exception was a last minute deal to pass some Hurricane Helene relief, which was a shared priority for both chambers. Another win came with the passage of House Bill 412, the Child Care Regulatory Reform Act. Now, this bill had strong bipartisan support and was a top priority for those working to expand access to affordable, high-quality childcare. It includes several reforms, such as decoupling subsidy payments from the star rating system, easing licensing for school-based programs, and making it easier for experienced workers to get credentials. It also reclassifies family child care homes as residential instead of commercial buildings, helping reduce costly barriers for smaller providers. This marks a major step forward for stabilizing and growing the state's child care system. Also passed was Senate Bill 479, the SCRIPT Act, which targets the high cost of prescription drugs. The bill increases transparency and adds new rules for pharmacy benefit managers and other middlemen. It protects independent pharmacies, lets patients keep using the pharmacy of their choice, and limits hidden fees. Most notably, it requires that part of the rebates from drug manufacturers be passed on to patients at the pharmacy counter, a move supporters say will help lower out-of-pocket costs and make pricing fairer and more competitive. And finally, with no full budget in place, the General Assembly adjourned, kind of. The Senate passed a resolution to return for short sessions roughly once a month for the rest of the year, focused on topics like disaster recovery, budget matters, and election laws. However, the House left town without adopting that resolution, so the final schedule is still somewhat uncertain. We do expect them to be back in a couple of weeks to do something. We'll continue monitoring developments that impact the business community, and our video updates will return when the legislature reconvenes, and if there's any relevant news for you to hear. Until next time, and we don't quite know when next time will be, I'm Brian Francis. This has been the Matthews Area Chamber Advocacy Update, sponsored by Atrium Health.